Mr. President, tomorrow, June 20th, is World Refugee Day. The United Nations General Assembly in 2000 declared June 20th to be World Refugee Day so that we can have public awareness and support for refugees, asylum seekers, and displaced people. The numbers are now out as to the number of displaced people in the year 2017. And that number is kind of shocking. It's a record setting for recent times. 65.6 million people are displaced from their homes today. Over 22 million are refugees. Over 40 million are displaced within their own country, internally displaced individuals. And almost 3 million are asylum seekers. Mr. President, these numbers rival the number of displaced people we saw after World War II. 55% of the refugees come from 3 countries: Syria, Afghanistan, and South Sudan. We've seen recent additions to the number of displaced people. In Burma, the Rohingya Muslims were forced out of their homes. 750,000 had to flee. In the Central African Republic, we saw, again, by conflict, a lot of people being displaced. In our own hemisphere, in Venezuela, there's 1.5 million displaced from that conflict. And of course, we all are familiar with the problems in Central America, in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, countries that have been plagued by violence, in which a lot of families have tried to escape in order to save their children. In Syria, there are 12 million displaced people. 12 million. That's over half the population of Syria. As a result of the conflict and ISIS campaign, over half the people in that country are displaced. And when we talk about the impact it has on countries when individuals seek refugees to leave, in Lebanon, for example, 1 million Syrians have fled to Lebanon. And in Jordan, 660,000 Syrians have fled to Jordan. And these countries have been prepared to take in these refugees. The impact, of course, is immediate to the individuals that are displaced, but there's also an impact on the region. And as far away as we've seen distances that people will go in order to seek safety, a major impact on the continent in Europe. So, Mr. President, I'm going to be introducing a resolution for the United States Senate to go on record recognizing World Refugee Day. It will reaffirm the United States government's commitment to uphold international leadership, our strong support for humanitarian assistance, particularly in helping host countries' living conditions. I just saw the press accounts of the Rohingya population living in tent cities during the monsoon season at great risk. We need to join the international community to working to help these vulnerable people. And that the resolution speaks to us partnering with our international community. So this is an international effort with U.S. leadership, reaffirming our long-standing tradition of resettling refugees here in the United States. Mr. President, I've worked on this issue since I've been in Congress, and it's always been bipartisan. I have had strong partners on both the Democratic and Republican side fighting for America to maintain its leadership against the vulnerable people in the world that have been displaced in the refugee population and the asylum seekers. I remember very vividly working with Senator McCain on humanitarian aid and holding those who prey on these vulnerable people who are displaced, making the perpetrators accountable for their human rights violations. And there have been many other examples of us working together. We should be welcoming the persecuted and vulnerable refugees here in the United States, recognizing that America's strength is in our diversity, People who braved coming to this country, who've built this great country, the United States of America. So, Mr. President, I need to comment that President Trump's policies stand in sharp contrast to what America's role must be in regards to promoting the welfare of displaced people as we tomorrow celebrate World Refugee Day. Now, I know that the subject that is getting the most debate right now, and rightly so, and I'm going to talk about it, is the removal of children from their parents at our border, which is, to me, an abomination. And I'm going to talk about that. But that's not the only problematic part of President Trump's refugee policies. This administration has reduced dramatically the refugee caps for those that are permitted to resettle here in the United States. We believe the number is as high as an 83% reduction in America's willingness to accept refugees. Here we are with global leadership asking countries to keep their borders open for those that are at risk in order to enter their country, and we're closing our borders. That's not what the world leader does in that regard. We've seen policies that discriminate in who can come to this country. There's no question that the Trump administration tried to impose a Muslim ban, a religious test as to who can come from this country. We heard the president's comments about certain countries, which raises questions as to whether the demographics of that country affect the ability of people being able to come here to America. And we've seen this administration propose time and time again cuts in humanitarian aid to vulnerable, displaced people in order to fund a wall on our southern border. And then there's the Dreamers, the DACA registrants. Through executive order, President Trump created a problem that didn't exist for the Dreamers, who were given status to be able to work and go to school under an executive order by President Obama. President Trump changed that by executive order. It wasn't Congress. Congress didn't create the problem. The president did. And then we have those that are legally here under temporary protected status, TPS, from El Salvador and Haiti and Nicaragua and other countries. They've been here for a long time because the conditions in their country have not changed. It's still not safe for them to live in the country. They are legally here in the United States. And against the recommendations of our own missions in these countries, the Trump administration decided to put an ending date for their legal status here in the United States, meaning even though they may have been here for 15 years, that they're going to have to leave America. That's done by executive action, by President Trump, not by Congress. We didn't create this problem. Whether it's the Dreamers or TPS, the president could change that today with the stroke of a pen. And then we have asylum seekers. Asylum seekers are the most persecuted, at risk of their own lives if they have to go back to their host countries. And what did Attorney General Sessions do? He removed victims of domestic abuse and gang violence from those who can seek asylum here in the United States. They did that by executive action, not Congress. We didn't create this problem. The Trump administration created the problem, and they could change it with the stroke of a pen. So, yes, there's a lot of issues that I believe President Trump's policies are not what America's about. Whether it's support for humanitarian aid, or whether it's the number of refugees that we accept, or whether it deals with the Dreamers, or deals with those in TPS status, or dealing with asylum seekers, all of that to me violates the bills of America that makes us the strong nation we are. But the most recent is outrageous and is affecting people's lives every day, children's lives every day. And that is the forced separation of parents from their children at our southern border. So let me set this up, because this again was done by the president, and he can correct it by the stroke of a pen. Congress didn't create the problem. The president did this, and the president can change this today. It's my understanding that as many as 70 children every single day are being separated from their parents at our southern border. This can't wait till tomorrow. Each one of these children will be scarred for the rest of their lives because of this cruel and inhumane policy announced by the Trump administration. So let us set this up as to how this happened, because there's no law requiring this. The president decided that because you happen to be a parent concerned about your child's life, you live in a country in which you have a choice of your child joining a gang. And by the way, by joining a gang, you're going to have to take someone else's life, because that's usually the admission to join a gang. And if you refuse to join a gang, not only is your life at risk, but your family's life's at risk. So what would you do as a father or a mother if your child was in that position? You're trying to seek the safety of your child. So you leave and you come to our southern border, and now you're told you're going to lose your child in separation? For doing what? Trying to protect that child's life? That's the United States? No, it isn't. But that's the policy that President Trump has established now at our southern border. It's got to end, and it can end today by the President of the United States signing an order telling that we're not going to do that. We all want to have rule of law and enforcement of laws at our border. We understand that, but you don't separate children from their parents. That can change, and we need to change it. Why are we doing this? Attorney General Sessions said we're doing this as a deterrent. We take children away from parents as a deterrent when parents are acting in order to protect their children? That makes absolutely no sense. And then I heard, look, Congress could take action. The president has said that. We could take action. Well, our domestic policies must support our fundamental ideals of compassion and freedom and our unwavering support for human rights. I agree with that. And yes, it'd be nice for Congress to pass laws. I'm all for doing that. But we saw that we weren't even able to pass a bill protecting the Dreamers, even though Democrats and Republicans agreed on it, because President Trump wanted to use that for leverage for his wall and for repressive immigration policies. So let us not go down another path where we're going to have a delay after delay after delay and children being separated from parents every day. This is the President Trump's responsibility to correct today. And yes, we should work on legislation. I applaud Senator Feinstein for her legislation that would keep families together with a proper legal process. I congratulate Senator Tina Smith for helping Separated Children's Act, which gives fundamental principles. A lot of us have talked about various parts of immigration reform and comprehensive immigration reform. I'm all for that. I voted for comprehensive immigration reform. But make no mistake about it. Children are being taken away from their parents today when their parents have done nothing other than trying to protect their children by U.S. authorities on our southern border. It's happening today. And the way to change it today is for President Trump to say that's not what we're going to do here in America. Mr. President, I stand ready to work with any of my colleagues for reasonable laws that can protect the vulnerable people. This is, as I said today, World Refugee Day, where we have record numbers of people who have been displaced. America has a responsibility to be a leader on these issues and to lead by example, recognizing that diversity is our strength and we have responsibilities to those who have been persecuted, to be able to welcome those under our reasonable vetting rules so that we can, in fact, live up to our principles and lead the world. I ask my colleagues on this World Refugee Day, let us work together. And I ask President Trump to do the right thing and reverse these repressive, un-American policies that he has put into place. I yield.